Hi everyone, Heather Reed here. I'm thinking that perhaps the video didn't play, but that's okay. The content is stellar today, so just say hello in the comments and let me know that you're here. My name is Heather Reed, and I'm glad that you're here with me. I use she, her pronouns, and for those using accessibility technology, I'm a 60-year-old white female sitting in my home office with wall-to-wall bookshelves behind me, an ash-colored hair, red glasses, and I'm wearing a navy blue blouse. Before we dive into today's topic, two quick but very important notes. I'm not a lawyer, perhaps a lawyer wannabe, but I'm not. And so therefore, what we're discussing today is for education purposes, and you should always consult with legal counsel about your particular event situation. And second, I want to hear from you, whether you're watching live or whether you're catching a replay, watching it on YouTube. Please drop your questions or comments in the appropriate spot, and I'll do my best to answer them for you. So today's topic is recitals are often MIA, missing in action, in event contracts. Imagine walking into a music recital and they don't give you a program. It's already started. There's no introductions of who's performing and no context, just random performances. Well, that's what it's like to read a contract with no recitals. You lose the narrative, you lose the story of the contract. I'm going to divide today's topic into 6 parts, and the 6 parts are: 1, what are recitals anyway? 2, what happens when recitals are missing? 3, what should recitals include? 4, what are the purpose of the event statements? Part 5, why recitals empower clients. And we'll wrap it up with part 6, making recitals work for the client. So let's dig into part 1. What are recitals anyways? Well, recitals, sometimes called background statements, probably a better way to remember it, but formally the legal term is recitals, but they are background statements. So that should give you a clue as to the purpose of these statements. They are typically found right after the contract title and date and the parties that are involved in the contract and their contact details. They may start with classic legal terms, whereas. So I thought I'd give you a couple of examples that may be familiar to you. So whereas the client desires to host an event in the convention center, and the convention center agrees to provide the necessary space and services under the terms set forth herein. You may also find a whereas statement that reads something like, whereas this agreement constitutes a binding contract between the parties and supersedes all prior negotiations, representations, or agreements regarding the subject herein. So as I said, background statements, whereas statements, they are setting up a narrative. Now, what I know to be true is that you often find them in convention center contracts, but we rarely find them in hotel contracts. And that's a shortcoming. We need to rectify that. So recitals are written to explain the why behind the contract. They provide context. They define the intentions of each party named in the contract, and they outline the big picture of the relationship. They tell the story of the event. So what kind of event is it? Why is it happening? Who's involved and what are their roles? Who is the client? What is the client's purpose for the event? And what does the supplier bring to the table? So I want you to think of it this way. The recitals bring the whole reason for the contract into focus. And yet, they're missing in action more often than not. Part 2, What happens when recitals are missing? When recitals are absent, contracts lose a vital piece of clarity and alignment. I know from my own experience reviewing hundreds of event contracts, and I'm sure you do too, that many suppliers operate with standardized templates or boilerplate contracts that skip right from the parties to dates, rates, and space, and then terms and conditions. Well, that might work well for a widget or a gadget, but in the event world, we're not just renting space and tables and chairs and acquiring food and beverage. We're entering into relationships to deliver experiences with high stakes, experiences that hinge on precision, on trust, on timing, and a shared understanding of what we're doing there on that date and time. So here's just a couple of possibilities of what could go wrong when recitals, also known as background statements, are left out. One, the supplier's misunderstanding of the scope and the importance of the event to the client. Number two, gaps in supplier's service delivery leading to credibility loss for the client. Or three, disputes over each other's performance because intentions and clarity weren't stated. So, in short, no recitals in the contract equals more risk for the client. So, part three, what should recitals include? Well, let's dive into what a good set of recital statements should contain. Here's your 4-point checklist. 1, the expertise of the supplier. So start by affirming that the supplier possesses the necessary facilities, the technical capabilities, the professional experience, the qualified personnel to provide the contracted products and or services. So if you're contracting for accommodations or banquet catering or a trade show or a conference, you're confirming in writing that the supplier that you've chosen possesses the necessary facilities, capabilities, experience, staff, etc., to deliver your client event. This establishes that the supplier is the client's capable partner. The second item on that checklist is the importance and the purpose of the event. We want to emphasize that the client is hosting this particular event as it is critical activity that supports the business, the mission, the fundraising, the community building, or the brand recognition of the client. Articulating the importance of the client's event helps establish a shared responsibility and a shared understanding of the event's value. So we're not framing it as just another event, but a critical activity of the client. So outlining the importance of the event can be accomplished through articulating in writing a series of statements called the purpose of the event. And we're going to get to that just shortly. So the third item on the checklist is the stakes. What is at stake? Make clear that the supplier recognizes the impact, the risks, and the potential consequences of the supplier's non-performance. The supplier's non-performance could impact the client financially, reputationally, logistically, operationally. The supplier needs to acknowledge that the failure to adequately provide the contracted products or services may have real-world impact on the client's event, and the client's attendees' experience. And then fourth, we want to establish mutual intent. We want to state that the client wants and agrees to contract this particular supplier's product or services, and that the supplier agrees to provide them while understanding the importance and the significance of this event to the client. The client and the supplier will be working together in this contractual relationship that is being built on shared goals and mutual understanding. So that brings us to part 4, which is the purpose of the event statements. Recitals, which are the background statements, must include information about the purpose of the event. As this is a written description containing the rationale for the event, what is the event about? Who is the event for? And critical considerations for the event. We're not talking about fluffy stuff here. We're talking critical business information that the client wants to communicate and confirm and contract with the supplier. So key details to include might be the event type. Is this a product launch? Is this an educational multi-day conference? Is it a fundraiser? Is it an association's annual general meeting? There is endless possibilities of what the event type could be. How often is the event held? Is this a one-off event? Is this an annual sales kickoff event? Is this a monthly board meeting? Is this a biannual event? Establish the frequency, if you will, of the event. Then we want to look at the client's audience. So, are the audience or the attendees, are they the client's employees? Are they the client's members, like an association membership? Are they sponsors? Are there VIPs attending the event, so the executive of a corporation? Is it a trade show that has general public walking through the door? So itemizing and giving broad categories about who the audience or the attendees are is important, because it will cause you to flag different risks or different needs of those attendee categories. So who, in general terms, is coming? Then we want to establish the event components. And by this, I mean, what kinds of events are within the event? So are we looking at an association multi-day conference, for example? It would have plenary sessions, it would have breakout sessions, it may have a networking social, it may have an awards program, a gala banquet, it may have a fundraising component, trade show. There's any number of events within an event sometimes. And we want to make sure that we are clearly outlining the breadth of the event and what is taking place for the whole event, not maybe just what's particular to this contract, but for the whole event, what is the big picture? We go back to attendees. What is the geographic reach of attendees? So are the attendees local to where you're contracting? Are the attendees regional? Are they provincial or state? Are they coming from across the nation? Do you have portions of international attendees? And I will add here that if, based on data or your best sense, if you're able to put approximate percentages along with those local, regional, provincial or state, national, international, that's even better. So something like an association's annual conference may draw 10% local folks, may draw 70% national folks, and may draw 20% international folks as well. Because you can imagine that you get looking at what the risks might be if you have international guests. Closing of borders may be a factor in your performance. So we want to build a picture of where are attendees coming from. Then we want to look at any risks that are known that can be pre-identified or that you've encountered previously, potential risks, and dependencies. So when you think about this, is the event contingent on a single speaker? Are the topics in your product launch or your sales kickoff, is that highly proprietary information? Are there situations that would make the hosting of this particular event impractical or unviable? I am aware of an organization, an ethnic organization, that encountered protests outside of their hotel property, and now they build into future contracts that is a potential risk that is fully disclosed to who they're contracting with, because again, that requires a partnership in addressing that kind of risk. And then, are there any special details? So what accessibility requirements are essential? What do attendees need as far as specific amenities, or what do they expect as far as specific amenities, or perhaps venues nearby? Anything that is particular to your event and that would in some way affect the big picture of your event, you want to include. So there are your event type, the frequency of hosting the event, the client's audience, the event components, the geographic reach of the attendees, the risks and dependencies, and the special details. So if you wrap those up in a succinct and meaningful way, and it creates a narrative about the client's event, and it creates a shared foundation between the supplier that you're contracting with and you, the client. So it paints a picture for everyone of the reason for the event and the measures of success for the event. And it gives the supplier clarity and commitment. Okay, part 5. So why do recitals empower clients? So most suppliers, as I said, don't add recitals or background statements unless you, the client, ask for them. And here's the tough truth. The client has to advocate for the inclusion of the purpose of the event in your contract. And when I say advocate, let me just be crystal clear. The client will probably need to insist and persist for it to be included right from the very beginning. So it needs to be identified in your request for proposals that you will expect. The client expects their purpose of the event statement and background narratives to be included. And when the client is successful in having recitals included, they help frame the supplier and the client's relationship with clarity. They protect the client from shortcomings and misunderstandings, and they anchor any need for dispute resolution or legal action in the documented intent of the event. If the supplier resists including recital statements into the body of the contract, the client should insist that their purpose of the event document, their background statements, are included as an attachment to the contract and ensure that it is specifically referenced by document name in the body of the contract. All right, part 6, making recitals work for the client. So how do we get there? Well, it starts with the client's mindset and the client's process. So how do we embed recitals or background statements into your contracts? Well, first of all, create a template. You could have a standard recital draft that the client personalizes for each event. You build it in to the internal contract workflow. Second, absolutely collaborate with legal and procurement teams, whether they are legal is in-house or external counsel. Make sure that the client's legal and procurement teams know the purpose of having recitals or background statements included, and that they are aligned as to the importance of including them. And then third, educate the client's supplier. If the client's supplier doesn't know how to write or read a recital or background statements, help them. Share your event purpose summary and ensure that they understand its value to you and its value to them ultimately in supporting and contracting with you. And finally, be assertive. Don't just request that recitals are included, require them. The client is, after all, the client, and we should be able to leverage that as a key point that this is a mandatory requirement. So in wrapping up today's session, let's summarize the most critical ideas that you can take away from this session. 1, recitals provide context. Recitals or the background statements set the tone, they define the why, and they shape the supplier's understanding of the client's event. Recitals are not optional. That's number 2. Recitals are not optional. Recitals may seem unnecessary, but they're functionally vital. Their absence increases the client's risk. Number 3, include the purpose of the event statements. This is the client's contract's North Star. Embed it clearly within the contract or as a referenced attachment. And then 4th, clients must advocate for inclusion. If the client doesn't insist for inclusion, they won't be included. It's the client's responsibility to insist and persist. All right. Contracts are not just legal documents. They are business tools. They are communication bridges between suppliers and clients. And they're risk mitigation strategies. They help clarify when something goes wrong, how will it be resolved? How will something going wrong be measured? And at their best, contracts actually are storytellers. They explain who is involved, they explain what is being done, and why all of that matters. So in contracts, recitals, those background statements, do the heavy lifting for the client. So the next time you sit down to review and negotiate a contract for the client's event, don't let the recitals be missing in action. All right. Before we close off today, I haven't seen any questions come through, which is quite okay. I'll finish up, and then if there's questions, certainly I'll take them. I have 3 reminders, as I always do. First, if you've enjoyed today's content, it's practical and it's essential. This is included and representative of the teachings in the Certified Event Contract Professional program. And you can check that program out at cecp.plannerprotect.ca. The second reminder is we being Planner Protect, we don't want you to miss any education content or announcements from Planner Protect. Our newsletter is published on Thursdays, and you can sign up on our website, plannerprotect.ca. And then the third reminder, always remember, a well-negotiated event contract isn't just a document. It's your power, it's your protection, and it's your peace of mind. Thank you so much for joining me today. See you next time.